"It hurt down there, too," the virgin bride cried. "The rancher pulled it back and froze." The morning sun shone softly over the wide green ranch, spilling golden light across the rolling hills and the small, sturdy house at the heart of the property. Birds chirped happily, their song mixing with the low hum of the distant cattle. "It was a perfect day for a wedding," everyone said, and the ranch seemed to celebrate along with them. Inside the house, the air buzzed with a quiet, nervous energy. The bride, a young woman with delicate features and shy eyes, moved carefully around the room, trying not to stumble over the folds of her cream-colored dress. Every step reminded her that today was a turning point, a day that would change her life forever. She paused in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric over her shoulders. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the heat or the excitement of the day, but from the uncertainty that settled deep in her chest. She had dreamed of this moment, of course, but dreams were often easier than reality. Today, she would stand beside the rancher, the man she had agreed to marry, and the thought both thrilled and terrified her. She could feel her heart beating faster, each thump a reminder of how vulnerable she truly felt. Meanwhile, in the main room of the house, the rancher was getting ready. His movements were calm, practiced, but his mind was alert, aware of every detail of the day. The rancher was a man used to responsibility, to making decisions that affected more than just himself. Today, however, was different. Today he was stepping into a new role, one that required more than strength or skill. It required understanding, patience, and a heart willing to listen. He adjusted his coat one last time and glanced at the small window where the sun lit up the rolling fields he had tended for years. Everything felt right, yet his chest held a quiet tension. He loved her. He wanted to protect her, to make her feel safe. But he also knew there were things he did not yet understand about her fears and insecurities. Outside, the guests began arriving, their cheerful chatter floating in through open windows. Friends, neighbors, and distant relatives moved about the ranch, admiring the flowers and decorations, commenting on the warmth of the morning air. Children ran across the yard laughing as the dogs barked in response, and the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee lingered from the kitchen. Everything was beautiful, orderly, perfect in its own way. Yet inside, the bride felt a knot tightening in her stomach. She tried to smile, to match the calm expressions of her family and friends, but the tension refused to leave her. The ceremony began in the small garden beside the house, where a wooden arch was decorated with wildflowers. The guests gathered in neat rows, their faces bright with expectation. The bride walked slowly toward the arch, her hand brushing against the delicate lace of her dress. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down not by the dress but by the emotions rising within her. She had never felt so exposed, so aware of herself, and yet she forced herself to keep moving forward. The rancher stood at the arch, his posture steady, his gaze fixed on her. There was a softness in his eyes, a quiet reassurance that tried to tell her everything would be all right. He knew she was nervous, and he wanted her to know he would not rush her, that he would be there every step of the way. He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth lifting in a way that promised patience and understanding. And for a brief moment, the world around them seemed to pause. The wind stopped, the birds went quiet, and all that remained was the two of them, standing at the threshold of their new life. Vows were exchanged, words of love and commitment spoken with trembling voices. The bride's words came slowly, each one a careful step toward a future she had only imagined. She looked into the rancher's eyes, seeing not just the man she was marrying, but a reflection of her own fears and hopes. He listened attentively, nodding slightly, his voice steady when it was his turn. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, every word carrying the weight of sincerity. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the guests clapped, some cheering, others wiping tears from their eyes. The bride felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation, knowing that the most private and personal part of this day was yet to come. Later, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the fields in shades of gold and amber, the couple retreated to a quiet room in the house. The rancher closed the door gently behind them, leaving them alone. The room was warm, with soft light streaming through the curtains. The bride's hands shook slightly as she fidgeted with the edge of her dress, while the rancher watched her carefully, sensing the tension in her body. He moved closer, but not too close, giving her space while keeping a reassuring presence near. I'm not sure, she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with a mix of fear and vulnerability. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes fully. I've never done this before. I'm scared. The rancher's chest tightened. He had expected nervousness, of course, but the raw honesty in her words made his heart ache. He knelt down slightly, bringing himself closer to her level, and spoke softly. It's all right. We'll take it slow. I won't do anything you don't want, and I'll stop if it hurts or scares you. You only need to trust me when you're ready. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain yet, but from relief. Relief that someone understood her, that she was not being forced or rushed, that her feelings mattered. She nodded slowly, trying to steady herself, but then a sudden sharp sensation made her cry out softly, "It hurts down there, too!" The rancher froze instantly. His hands hung in the air, unsure where to rest them. The words echoed in the quiet room. More than a statement, they were a plea, a revelation of her vulnerability.
He had prepared himself for many things, but not this sudden, honest expression of fear and discomfort.
He stared at her, seeing her trembling form, the tears welling in her eyes, and for a moment he simply froze. Not because he didn't know what to do, but because he wanted to respect her entirely, to understand her completely before acting in any way. He gently reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch soft and reassuring. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "I want to understand you, not hurt you. I'm not going to do anything until you're ready." She nodded again, overwhelmed by the kindness and patience in his tone. She felt her chest tighten, a mixture of fear, relief, and the strange warmth of trust. She wanted to step forward, to bridge the gap between fear and closeness, but her body and mind needed time. The rancher noticed her hesitation and simply held her hand lightly, letting her feel his presence without pressure. For a long while they sat in silence, the only sound being the soft rustling of the curtains and the occasional distant call of a bird. The rancher studied her carefully, not for himself but to understand her, to see what made her comfortable, what scared her, and how he could help her feel safe. He thought about the life they were about to build together, one that required patience, understanding, and deep emotional connection. This moment, as small as it seemed, was the foundation. Finally, the bride took a shaky breath and looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I want to trust you," she whispered. "I'm just scared." The rancher smiled softly, relief washing over him. "And that's okay. Fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." "We'll go at your pace. I'll be here. Always." She nodded, a small smile breaking through her nervousness. The tension in her body eased slightly, replaced by the beginnings of trust and connection. The rancher squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise that he would not break it. And in that quiet, golden-lit room, two hearts began to move closer, not in haste or desire, but in understanding and care. Outside, the ranch continued its quiet rhythm, the sun painting everything in warm light. But inside, a new journey had begun, a journey of patience, trust, and deep emotional connection. And though neither of them knew exactly what the future held, they both understood that the first step was not physical. It was emotional, a step built on honesty, vulnerability, and love. The rancher remained frozen for a moment longer, not in shock but in awe. He had expected a wedding night to be simple, perhaps romantic, perhaps nervous, but he had not expected it to be so real, so raw. And in that moment he realized that what mattered most was not what he had imagined or desired, but what she needed. The bride, still trembling, leaned slightly toward him, finding comfort in his patient presence. She did not need to speak, the silence was enough. And together they sat in that quiet room, letting the weight of the day settle, letting their hearts begin to learn each other. It was not perfect, it was not easy, but it was real. And sometimes reality, with all its fear and vulnerability, was the most beautiful thing of all. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting a warm glow across the fields. The dew on the grass sparkled like tiny jewels, and the soft sound of cattle lowing in the distance added a peaceful rhythm to the day. Inside the house, the young bride sat by the window, gazing at the horizon. Her mind was full of thoughts and emotions from the night before. Though the tension of the previous evening had eased somewhat, a lingering nervousness remained. She was not just thinking about the wedding night, she was thinking about the life she had agreed to share with the rancher, a man who had already shown her patience and care unlike anyone she had ever known. The rancher entered the room quietly, careful not to startle her. His boots made soft sounds on the wooden floor, and she turned to look at him with a small, tentative smile. He returned it gently, sensing that she needed reassurance, not pressure. For a moment they simply stood there observing each other in silence. Words were not always necessary, he thought. Sometimes presence alone could say more than anything else. He moved closer and took her hand softly, not to lead but to offer comfort. "Good morning," he said in his calm, steady voice. "Did you sleep at all?" She shook her head slightly, a faint smile touching her lips. "A little," she admitted. "But I kept thinking. About last night. About us." He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "I've been thinking too," he said, "about how important it is to take things slowly. About how important it is that you feel safe." Her chest tightened with relief. The words he spoke were exactly what she needed to hear, and they reminded her that she was not alone in her fears. She looked into his eyes and saw not just patience but respect. She had never felt that level of understanding from anyone before. For the rest of the morning, they moved through small routines together, preparing breakfast, checking on the animals, and tending to the ranch chores. Though the work was ordinary, it carried a new significance. Every shared task became a chance to understand each other, to communicate without words, and to build a sense of partnership that went beyond the surface. The rancher noticed her hesitation when lifting heavier objects, and without a word, he would step in, helping her with a gentle smile. She, in turn, began to trust his strength and his judgment, recognizing that his patience was genuine and unwavering. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk through the fields surrounding the ranch. The morning air was fresh and crisp, carrying the scent of grass, flowers, and earth. As they walked, the bride felt the tension in her shoulders slowly ease. She spoke hesitantly at first, sharing memories of her childhood, her hopes, and the small fears that she had carried quietly inside her. The rancher listened without interruption, nodding occasionally, asking gentle questions and offering soft encouragement. "I've never been around so many animals before," she admitted, glancing at a herd of cows grazing nearby. "And I never imagined I'd be living on a ranch. It's bigger than I expected, but also—" He smiled, glad that she was beginning to notice the charm of the place. "It's not always easy," he said. "It takes work, patience, and respect for every living thing. But I think you'll find it rewarding. And we'll face it together." The bride felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. His calm confidence, paired with his willingness to guide her without forcing her, made her feel protected yet independent. She began to understand that trust was built not through grand gestures, but through consistent, small actions, through listening, waiting, and showing care without expectation. Later in the day, as the sun climbed higher and the heat became noticeable, they paused near a small creek running along the edge of the property. The water moved gently over smooth stones, creating a soothing sound. The rancher knelt beside the creek and gestured for her to join him. She hesitated, then sat down carefully, her fingers trailing in the cool water. "I know last night was difficult," he said softly, not looking at her, but at the water. "And I know you were afraid. I want you to know that it's okay to be scared. Everyone has fears, and it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It makes you real." Her eyes welled up with tears, but this time they were not just from anxiety, they were from relief, from the realization that someone understood her completely. She looked at him and saw no judgment, no expectation, only patience and care. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the emotional gap between them, but she still felt a flicker of fear deep inside. "I've never shared anything like this with anyone," she admitted quietly. I've always felt I had to hide my fears or face them alone. But with you, it feels different.
He reached out and gently took her hand, holding it in a way that was firm enough to be reassuring but soft enough to respect her comfort.
You don't have to hide anything from me, he said. I want to know your fears, your worries, everything. And you won't ever have to face them alone. We'll face them together. The bride nodded slowly, feeling the tension in her body loosen. She realized that trust was not something she could force. It had to grow naturally, like a seed nurtured by care, patience, and understanding. And for the first time, she felt that she was ready to begin that process. As they continued walking along the creek, they spoke about small, everyday things, plans for the future, hopes for the ranch, and the simple joys of life. Their conversation was easy and natural, free from the pressure of expectation. With each word, each shared thought, they moved closer emotionally, building a foundation of trust that was stronger than any physical closeness could achieve. Later that afternoon, a small mishap occurred. A calf had wandered too close to the creek and was struggling in the shallow water. The bride froze for a moment, unsure of how to help, but the rancher acted quickly, his movements calm and precise. He rescued the calf and then turned to her with a reassuring smile. See, he said gently. Everything is okay. Sometimes things go wrong, and that's all right. We figure it out together. The bride watched him, amazed at his composure and care. You make it look so easy, she said, still feeling a little nervous but admiring him all the same. He shook his head with a small laugh. It's not always easy. But you learn, and you get better, and you do it for the right reasons. As the day moved toward evening, they returned to the house, both tired but with a new sense of closeness. The rancher had not pressured her, had not expected anything beyond her comfort, and in doing so, had given her the most valuable gift, the beginning of trust. She had started to understand that intimacy was not just about physical closeness, but about knowing someone's heart and feeling safe with them. That evening they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of pink, orange, and purple, and the world felt calm and quiet. The bride leaned slightly against the rancher's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his presence, and the security of knowing that he would not push her beyond what she was ready for. I think I'm ready to try, she said softly, almost to herself. Not everything, but to start trusting fully. He turned to her, eyes gentle and full of understanding. And that's all I ask, he replied. We'll take it one step at a time. No rush, no pressure. Just you and me, learning together. She smiled, feeling the tightness in her chest ease further. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer felt overwhelming. She knew that with patience, understanding, and care, she could face it. And more importantly, she knew that she was not alone. As night fell, the lights of the ranch glowed warmly, casting long shadows across the fields. The bride and rancher remained on the porch, talking quietly, laughing softly at small jokes and sharing stories of their pasts. The emotional bond between them had deepened, and a new level of trust had been established. It was a slow, careful process, but it was real, meaningful, and lasting. And as they finally went inside to rest, the bride felt a calm she had never known before. She was beginning to understand that love was not just about passion or excitement, it was about patience, care, understanding, and the willingness to move at a pace that felt safe. She had taken the first steps toward trusting the rancher completely, and he had shown her that the journey would be guided by respect, empathy, and the quiet strength of his heart. It was not the end of the story, but it was the beginning of something far greater than either of them had imagined. Something built not on fear or expectation, but on trust, patience, and true understanding. The following morning, the ranch was alive with activity. Cows lowed in the distance, roosters crowed, and the smell of fresh hay filled the air. The bride and the rancher moved about the property together, each attending to small chores. While the work seemed ordinary, their bond had begun to show in subtle ways. She noticed how he anticipated her needs, offering help without being asked, and he noticed her growing confidence in performing tasks she had once feared. It was a quiet harmony, but the world outside the ranch did not always move in harmony with them. Word of their recent marriage had begun to spread through the nearby town and the ranching community. Not all of it was well-intentioned. Whispers carried in the wind, comments made by neighbors, and the occasional sly remark left behind by curious townsfolk created an invisible pressure around the young couple. Some people did not understand the pace at which the bride and rancher were moving. To them it seemed unusual that the bride appeared so reserved, or that the rancher had not demanded immediate closeness. But the couple had chosen to take their time, to build trust first, and this choice made them targets for judgment. The bride first noticed it while helping in the kitchen. A neighbor stopping by under the pretense of delivering bread remarked casually, "I hear the young bride is still shy. Must be difficult for the rancher, eh?" Her face flushed with embarrassment, though the words were indirect. The rancher, who was nearby, noticed the comment and felt a flash of irritation. He knew that the words were meant to undermine the bond they were building, to shame her for simply being herself. He stepped forward calmly, addressing the neighbor with a polite but firm voice. "She's learning at her own pace," he said. "We respect each other, and that's what matters most." The neighbor muttered something under her breath and left, but the bride felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Relief that the rancher had defended her, and anxiety that people would continue to judge, comment, and interfere. She realized that trust was not only about the two of them, it was also about resisting the world that sought to impose its own expectations. Later that afternoon, a sudden problem arose on the ranch. A storm had begun to form in the distance, dark clouds rolling across the hills faster than expected. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain, and the cattle became restless. The rancher and bride moved quickly to secure the livestock, guiding the cows into safer areas of the pasture and ensuring the gates were locked. The bride worked diligently, her movements still careful but more confident than the previous day. "Hold this gate," the rancher called, adjusting the latch to prevent the wind from blowing it open. She took a deep breath and pulled it firmly. For a moment, fear and uncertainty returned, but she steadied herself, remembering his guidance from the day before. "Like this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the gusts of wind. "Yes," he replied with a small nod.
Exactly. You're doing great. The storm arrived more quickly than expected, bringing heavy rain that soaked the fields within minutes.
They hurried to bring in smaller animals and secure equipment, moving as a team. In the chaos, the bride realized just how much she had grown over the past days. The rancher had trusted her to help, had believed in her abilities, and she had risen to the occasion. Each small success strengthened her confidence and deepened the bond between them. After the storm passed, the two of them stood in the yard, dripping wet, and looked around at the mess left behind. Branches were scattered, the soil was muddy, and the air was thick with the scent of wet grass. For a moment, the bride felt overwhelmed, thinking about all the work that would be required to restore order. "You did really well today," the rancher said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I know it was hard, and the storm made everything more difficult, but you didn't give up. That means more than you realize." Her chest swelled with pride and gratitude. She realized that trust was more than emotional. It was about relying on each other during challenges, facing fears together, and knowing that neither would be abandoned when difficulties arose. The physical tasks had mirrored the emotional journey she had been on, showing her that patience, guidance, and support could overcome fear. In the days that followed, they worked together to repair the damage from the storm. They replaced broken fences, cleared fallen branches, and ensured the animals were safe and comfortable. The bride's hands grew calloused and her muscles ached, but she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The rancher observed her quietly, proud of her determination and resilience. His admiration was not just for her ability to work, but for her willingness to face challenges, grow, and trust him along the way. Evenings became their time to reconnect emotionally. They would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories of their past, discussing hopes for the future, and reflecting on the day's events. The bride shared her fears about being judged, about making mistakes, and about the expectations she felt from the world around them. The rancher listened attentively, never dismissing her feelings, always offering calm reassurance and understanding. "You're stronger than you think," he said one night as the firelight danced across the walls. You faced fear, worked hard, and learned quickly. I see it, even if others don't. And I hope you see it too. She nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. I'm starting to, she whispered. It's still scary sometimes, but I know you're here, and that makes all the difference. The small victories and challenges outside the house helped them grow closer emotionally. The bride realized that intimacy was not only about private moments, but about how the rancher treated her in the world, how he defended her, guided her, and believed in her abilities. Each action, each word of encouragement reinforced her trust. She began to feel secure not just with him, but within herself. One afternoon, while tending to the garden, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. A family friend from the town came by, curious about how the newlyweds were settling in. The friend made casual observations, some praising, some critical, regarding how the bride adapted to ranch life. The bride felt nervous, her old insecurities flickering again. The rancher noticed immediately. He suddenly placed a hand near hers, just enough to reassure her without drawing attention. Ignore them, he whispered softly. We know our own truth, and that's what matters. The bride took a deep breath, and with his support she responded politely but confidently, showing that she was learning to assert herself while maintaining grace. She realized that part of trust was learning to face the world together, knowing that their bond was strong enough to withstand judgment or gossip. As the week progressed, the couple also shared quiet, tender moments. Simple gestures, a hand held during chores, a reassuring smile, a shared laugh, became the glue that strengthened their connection. The bride began to feel more comfortable expressing her feelings openly, and the rancher learned to read her subtle cues, offering support before she even asked for it. Their bond was no longer just emotional. It had begun to intertwine with the rhythm of daily life, showing that love and trust could grow steadily, even amid challenges. By the end of the week, the bride had grown in confidence, not just in her work, but in her ability to trust the rancher and herself. She no longer hesitated when he guided her, nor did she shrink from responsibilities on the ranch. The rancher, in turn, had gained a deeper understanding of her fears, hopes, and determination. He had seen her courage in the face of storms, both literal and emotional, and had learned that patience and empathy were far stronger than force or expectation. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the fields, the couple stood together on the porch. The breeze carried the scent of fresh grass, the distant lowing of cows, and the soft hum of evening life. The bride leaned lightly against the rancher, feeling the warmth of his body and the steadiness of his presence. I never imagined it could be like this, she said quietly. Life here and with you. I feel safe, even when things get hard. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next. He looked at her, his eyes reflecting both pride and tenderness. That's all I ever wanted, he replied, for you to feel safe, for us to face challenges together, and for our bond to grow stronger with each day. We're building something real, something lasting. She smiled, a genuine smile full of trust and hope. The lessons of the week, about patience, understanding, facing the world together, and small victories, had prepared her for the next stage of their life. She no longer felt overwhelmed by fear. Instead, she felt empowered by the support and care that had become a constant in her life. As night fell, the ranch quieted, leaving the couple with the gentle sounds of nature and the warmth of each other's presence. They knew challenges would continue to come, storms, unexpected visitors, and the judgments of others. But they also knew they had the foundation to face them together. Their trust was no longer fragile. It had been tested, strengthened, and woven into every shared moment. In the quiet of the night, the bride realized that love was not about rushing toward closeness, but about walking together, step by step, facing fear, learning patience, and discovering the true strength that came from trust and understanding. And in the rancher's steady presence, she found not just a partner, but a guide, a protector, and a friend who would stand by her through every challenge. The following morning, the ranch was quiet and serene. A soft breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak trees, carrying with it the scent of grass and wildflowers. Birds sang from the fences and rooftops, their songs a gentle soundtrack to the life the bride and rancher were building together. The storm from the previous week had passed completely, leaving the fields renewed, bright and vibrant under the morning sun. It was a new day, and for the couple it held the promise of connection, not hurried, but careful, thoughtful, and real. The bride moved through the house with a light step, her confidence slowly growing with each passing day. She carried a small basket of freshly picked herbs and flowers from the garden, arranging them carefully on the kitchen table. Each action felt natural now, each movement no longer accompanied by hesitation or self-doubt. Her eyes lifted as she saw the rancher entering the room, his expression calm and welcoming, as if he had been waiting for her to start the day together. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice carrying the warmth that had become a constant comfort to her. "Good morning," she replied, smiling gently. For the first time, the simple greeting felt full of meaning. There was no nervousness, no fear, only the familiarity of companionship. She set the basket down and turned to face him, feeling the quiet rhythm of their connection, a bond strengthened through trust, patience, and shared challenges. They spent the morning working side by side, tending to the garden and feeding the animals. Each task was a chance to communicate without words, to support each other through gestures, glances, and small actions. When she struggled to lift a heavy sack of feed, the rancher stepped in without a word, guiding her hands and supporting the weight. When he needed help securing a fence, she found ways to assist, her confidence growing as he watched patiently. Through these shared responsibilities, their bond deepened, built on respect, care, and the quiet joy of being together. By midday, the sun had risen high and they decided to take a break near the small creek that ran along the edge of the ranch. The water glistened in the sunlight, moving over smooth stones and creating a soothing murmur. The bride dipped her fingers into the cool water, letting it flow between her hands, while the rancher leaned against a nearby tree, watching her with gentle attention. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, her voice soft but steady, "about everything we've gone through in the past week, about the storm, about the way you've been patient with me, and about myself." He looked at her, eyes calm and kind, waiting for her to continue. "I realize now that trust isn't just something you say," she continued. "It's something you build every day, in the little things you do, in how you treat each other, in how you support one another when things are hard. And I want to keep building that with you." The rancher smiled, his chest warming with pride and relief. "And we will," he said. "We'll keep moving forward, together, at a pace that feels right for both of us. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Only what we're ready for, when we're ready for it." For the first time, the bride felt a true sense of peace. She realized that fear and hesitation were no longer walls keeping them apart. They were stepping stones, guiding them toward deeper connection. She had grown more confident, more aware of her own strength, and more trusting of the rancher. And he, in turn, had learned to read her moods, to notice the subtle cues of her comfort and discomfort, and to respond with care and understanding. After a quiet lunch on the porch, they sat together, watching the cattle grazing and listening to the soft hum of the wind through the trees. The bride leaned lightly against the rancher's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body and the steady rhythm of his breathing. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried immense meaning, a symbol of trust, comfort, and mutual respect. "I feel ready to be closer to you," she said softly, turning her head slightly to meet his gaze. "Not in a hurry, not forced, just together." The rancher nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting tenderness and understanding.
"I've been waiting for you to feel that way," he replied. "And we'll take it slowly."
"Every step we take will be guided by you, by what feels right, not by what anyone else expects." He reached out gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering just long enough to convey warmth and reassurance. She closed her eyes briefly, leaning into the gesture, and felt the tension she had carried for so long begin to melt away. Trust had blossomed fully now, built on a foundation of patience, care, and emotional connection. In the following days, the bride and rancher continued to grow closer, both emotionally and physically, in small, tender ways. They held hands while walking through the fields, shared quiet moments by the fireplace, and exchanged soft, meaningful glances that spoke volumes without words. The bride's fears no longer dictated her actions. Instead, she allowed herself to feel safe, to lean on the rancher, and to enjoy the simple joys of companionship and love. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the rancher led the bride to a quiet spot in the garden. The flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, and the air was filled with the soft scent of lavender and roses. He knelt down and took her hands in his, looking into her eyes with unwavering attention. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that everything we share is because I care for you deeply. Not because of expectation, but because of love. You've trusted me, and I will honor that trust every day of our lives." The bride felt tears welling in her eyes, not from fear or sadness, but from the depth of emotion that his words carried. She realized that she had never felt truly seen, understood, or valued in this way before. I trust you," she whispered. "Completely. And I want to share everything with you." "Slowly. Carefully. Together." He smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest, and gently pulled her into an embrace. It was soft, tender, and reassuring, a moment that spoke louder than words ever could. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the comfort of his presence. It was a physical closeness, yes, but more than that, it was the culmination of all the trust, patience, and care they had shared over the past days. Time seemed to slow in that quiet garden. The world outside faded, leaving only the two of them, connected not by urgency or expectation, but by mutual understanding and love. The bride felt safe to express her emotions, her warmth, and her affection, while the rancher responded with gentleness and respect. Every movement, every touch reinforced the bond they had carefully built together. As night fell and the stars appeared, the couple returned to the house, their hands still intertwined. They moved through the familiar spaces of the ranch with a new sense of harmony, a sense that they were partners in every way, emotionally, mentally, and now gently physically. The bride no longer felt fear when she leaned on him. Instead, she felt the quiet joy of being understood and valued. That night they sat by the fireplace once more, sharing stories, soft laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. The bride rested her head on the rancher's shoulder, feeling the warmth of the fire and the steady strength of his presence. The journey from fear to trust had not been easy, but it had been real. Every challenge, every gentle guidance, and every shared task had brought them closer, teaching them the true meaning of partnership and love. "I never imagined love could feel like this," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "Safe, patient, real." The rancher kissed the top of her head, holding her close. "That's the kind of love I wanted for us," he replied. "One built on understanding, respect, and trust. Not rushed, not forced. Just ours." And in that quiet, golden-lit room, the bride realized that she had found more than a husband. She had found a partner, a protector, and a friend. She had learned that love was not about urgency or expectation, but about patience, care, and mutual respect. And she knew that together they could face any challenge, any fear, and any storm as long as they trusted and supported each other. Outside, the ranch lay bathed in moonlight, peaceful and calm, as if reflecting the newfound harmony between the couple. The stars twinkled overhead, silent witnesses to the love, trust, and connection that had grown steadily between them. It was not a perfect love, but it was real, meaningful, and lasting. And for the bride and the rancher, that was more than enough.